Hey guys, welcome back. So today I want to talk about the vicious cycle of anxiety and what that looked like in my life, and hopefully it can help you understand your anxiety better. You know, I say this all the time, but it's so true. I felt like if I could know the inner workings of anxiety or my personal anxiety, I felt like I had more peace, and it allowed me to accept better if I knew how things worked. You know, if I knew how anxiety caused this symptom, it would make me more accepting of it, right? It would help me let go. If I knew that I, didn't have to be consciously anxious to deal with anxiety symptoms, that would have been great early on. That's not something that I figured out until later. But that's the reason I make these videos. I would love for you guys to get out of the cycle of anxiety faster than me. That's the whole goal. Without putting a time frame on it. You know what I mean? We're not trying to put too much pressure on the subconscious to heal. This does have to be a natural process, but you can definitely do this faster than, me. I suffered for years. And I know there's people on here that have been suffering for years. So just try to take my advice whenever I give it. And hopefully the storytelling and all that stuff's the cherry on top. And thank you for the response on yesterday's video. That video actually did pretty good, for my numbers that I usually get on this channel, which can be deceiving. I have like close to 120,000 subscribers, but it's tough to get 1,000 views on a video in one day, even for a channel of my size. So that video is like at 1,200. That's really good. That's damn good for my channel. So thank you guys for watching that. I had a lot of people comment and say that they like the longer form videos. I'm going to keep doing it. I know it's probably not everybody's thing, but I have to do shorter stuff on TikTok and do shorter stuff on Instagram. So follow those things if you want the shorter stuff. But I just kind of want to just be free on YouTube. I mean, YouTube after all it's more accepting of longer content, and there'll be a lot of times, guys, where I'll make a video and I'm trying to do it in 10 or 15 minutes because I wanted to repurpose that stuff on either TikTok or Instagram. And it was stressful. And a lot of times I would just stop recording and go inside because I just felt like it was hard to fit everything that I wanted to say into a 10 or a 15-minute video. And there were a lot of times I'd make a video and then later I'm watching it or I'm just thinking about it like, man, I forgot a point that I was gonna say. So if I can just take my time with these videos and you guys watch them, that'd be great. And I feel a little bit more confident doing it now, seeing the huge response as far as like people commenting and saying I love the long videos. I do too. I like some of my favorite videos on here from creators that I watch. I love the 20, 30-minute videos. A lot of times I'll eat my dinner and I'll watch it. Something that I look forward to every day. So I really want that to be the vibe on this channel. Lots of stories. I can talk as slow as I want to. I can come back and, mention something that I forgot to say earlier. I just want this to be a vibe where we're just talking back and forth like I'm your next door neighbor, or a friend sitting with you. So thank you guys for the response yesterday. That really helped reassure me on that. So I'd love to do this going forward. It doesn't mean that I'm going to always make them 20, 30 minutes, but, sometimes they're going to be a little bit shorter and to the point just because there's not a lot to say outside of that. But let's get to the point today now that I've rambled for 4 minutes. The cycle of anxiety, and it's going to look different for everybody. Everybody has different symptoms. Everybody's anxiety manifests in different ways. We have different severity levels. I'd like to think of my anxiety, especially the first half when I was going through hard anxiety. I'd say that's pretty severe anxiety, borderline crippling. Now, I'd have days where I'd like stay in bed a lot of the day or something like that. But, I wasn't ever like bedridden to the point to where like I couldn't get out of my bed at all. And there are some people that are at that point. I never was severely like agoraphobic. I mean, yeah, there were days I didn't want to leave the house because it was hot outside and I didn't want to get triggered, or I just didn't want to go outside because I had some light sensitivity and I didn't want it to trigger me. Or I called in because of work, or I called into work because of panic and I just wanted to stay inside. But I wasn't ever severely agoraphobic, so I'm just putting that out there. But it crippled every aspect of my life. I mean, it was so difficult to drive. so difficult. Anything over like 5 miles was such a huge challenge for me. It was hard to hold down a job. When I did hold down a job, I was miserable. And I just had to hold it together, put on a brave face, and show up, you know. And then there was a lot of other jobs after that big job that I always talk about, where I was a general manager. I had a lot of other jobs. I'm talking about just in and out. Like I'd try it out for a week or two, and then I'd move on to something else and move on to something else, which wasn't really like me. I wasn't an irresponsible person. I was a hard worker. It wasn't that I didn't like to work or that I was lazy. It's just anxiety. I'd be going through a cycle, or the panic would just be so much, and I would call in. I just felt like I literally could not get there. So that was something that I would go through, dealing with the driving anxiety. It took away the things that I loved doing. It robbed me of my passions. It robbed me of my youth. It was hard to hang out with people, do anything. You know, I talked about all my triggers yesterday, but as far as the cycle goes, we can say that my heart anxiety was a whole cycle itself, with a few ups and downs where there might be a day here and there that things are half-ass okay. But for the most part, those 2.5 years were really, really rough. Now, whenever I got out of that, you know, I'd say I got out of that cycle, which, you know, I've told it a million times on this channel. I ended up finally exercising and running when I had a panic attack, and it finally let me let go of my heart fears. Even more so than going to the doctors. I'm not saying don't go to the doctors for your issues, but for me personally, I had to finally convince myself there was nothing wrong with my heart via the exercise when I was stressed. I was like, well, this is going to tell me, you know what I mean? This is going to tell me whether or not I'm going to die or not from this. So I did that. I was like, thank God, I'm okay. All right. That means that there's nothing wrong with my heart. Finally, I can let go. Then I was like, damn, I wish I would have done this a long time ago. Maybe I wouldn't have dealt with this for 2.5 years. So anyways, I got past that, okay? And this is where I try to really help you guys. I really try to push this on coaching calls, because I know when I get on the phone with somebody, the first thing that they want to do is they want to talk about their problems now, the symptoms that they're having now, and I just have to because for them to get the real value, I want them to understand it's all about how you handle the next cycle, or prevent the next cycle, honestly. That's the goal, to keep this thing away. Like, you're going to get out of the heart anxiety that you're in now. You're going to get past the fears of digestive cancer or a tumor, and it doesn't have to all be health anxiety. You're going to get out of this cycle. But what happens when you feel a different sensation in 3 months? You know, what happens when you get COVID this winter? What happens when somebody in your family passes away? What happens if it gets stressful at work? A lot of us will slide right back into a new cycle, whether it be adversities, stress adding up, or with the health anxiety, which is my thing. You know, I'd feel a sensation that sometimes was caused, you know, by something regular, normal. It wasn't even caused by anxiety. So we enter a cycle like I was with the heart anxiety thing, and something happens. I mean, if you're having panic attacks, it really solidifies a cycle, and it's hard to get out of it for quite some time, because your cortisol goes up, the adrenaline dumps are constantly happening, the tension is just everywhere. I mean, every day I was having chest pains. Your fear, your focus, your hyper awareness is at an all-time high, and you're just fueling into this, you know, this fire, and you don't even realize you're doing it in the beginning. Maybe later on you start to recognize these things, and that's why we start to try to get away from them and learn from our past. But in the beginning, we just don't understand this, and we just fuel the anxiety fire. We're just dumping gasoline on it with the fear, the focus. So what are we doing? We're Googling everything. I'm trying to do all this research about heart problems, misdiagnosed heart problems. You know, you're joining Reddit groups, you're looking at, you know, Reddits, and you're joining Facebook groups of diseases you don't even have or haven't been diagnosed with. You know, your algorithms and all your stuff is all about the disease that you're fearing. You're seeing it everywhere on TV, the billboards. It's like the law of attraction is like manifesting this disease right in front of you. And that's what it's like. So it becomes like everything to us. So, and then what I talked about yesterday, and if you didn't see that video yesterday, go check it out, because I talked a lot about hypersensitivity. We become so sensitive during this period of time because we are in deep survival mode, right? So our body's trying to keep us alive and help us survive, to let us know if a freaking raindrop hits our freaking skin, or if a hair brushes up against you, or you have a weird thing in your stomach, or if it's a little hot, this might be dangerous. If it's a little cold, it might be dangerous. If you smell something weird or taste something different, it could be dangerous. So the idea is trying to protect you and to keep you out of harm's way. But when there's not any use for it, and all it's doing is keeping us from living a normal life and going to work and to be with our family and to be present and, you know, just enjoy life, it's not useful. You know, it's useful if there's a tiger, or if you're trying to get out of a active shooting situation, or just, you know what I'm talking about. Anything that requires that, you know, then sure, that's whenever it's useful. It's not useful if I'm just trying to drive to work on a normal sunny day, you know, but that's what happens. So we get into this state of hypersensitivity. Now, when we start to get out of the cycle, that looks different for every person, right? For different reasons. I just mentioned how I got out of the cycle of my heart anxiety. So I went out, I ran, finally convinced myself that there was nothing wrong, because, you know, I felt like I was taking a big risk going out there. But, you know, during these cycles, you know, we'll go get checked out for the certain symptoms that we deal with. We'll go get some testing. You know, we do all this. I had already done that. The missing piece was exercise. So I finally figured that out. Now, that made the message of chest pain and the heart-related symptoms ineffective, essentially, right? Because if they weren't scaring me, they weren't worrying me, you know, and I had stopped putting all the focus. I had stopped doing all the Googling. I finally was able to let go. So now the symptoms, which are the message, they're not effective anymore. And that's what happens. The brain gets bored. The subconscious finally stops whining towards you and crying out for help, because it sees that you're good, that you're confident, that you're not really afraid of this anymore, that things are safe. And as a subconscious, I feel kind of silly to just keep on sending you these symptoms for no freaking reason. Like, okay, I get it. Like, we don't need to be in survival mode. Okay, I understand. And you back that up with your responses. You back that up with your actions. Me working out more was some of that action, you know, or lack of action, as far as like lack of checking my vitals. I stopped Googling and researching. So I just handled that situation great. So I learned some good lessons. You know, I got away from certain things. It was a big, huge thing, because for me, guys, that got me out of panic disorder. Pretty much. I still had a few panic attacks. I don't know what the criteria is these days for panic disorder. It's actually pretty ridiculously low. Something like if you have like one panic attack every 6 months to a year or something, I think I remember reading that years ago. It could be different now. Anyways, the criteria for that is crazily low. But anyways, I felt like I, for the most part, got out of the panic disorder cycle. So that was great. So that helped me with less adrenaline. So I'm sure my cortisol levels got better. I was eating a little bit better. I had stopped smoking cigarettes by this point. You know, I was trying to control drinking a lot more, because I just realized how bad it made me the next day. So that was going good with me. And I was getting away from checking my vitals and stuff. So some good things, right? So after that, I thought I was done with this thing. Just like a lot of you thought you were done with your anxiety after you got past that first cycle. Man, what a crazy thing that was. That was a wild ride, you know. I'm just so thankful to be past that. Oh my God, you know, you're sleeping again, you're getting sleep, you know, because I think with most people, their first cycle of anxiety is the worst. And I think that's when you have the panic attacks a lot, you know what I mean? Because you don't know what the hell's going on. You don't know how anxiety works. It's scary. You're not sleeping, constant panic, hard to hold a job. Some of you got to quit your job, or you go on a leave, you're stressing your partners out, you know, your spouse out, whatever. You know, we're driving the people in our life crazy because we're always asking for reassurance, but what are we going to, you know, we don't know who to turn to. We're going to the doctors in and out. So you feel a little bit alive again. Now, some things that happen, and now it's good to be living life, but a lot of us will get complacent and we don't realize, well, what got us to this point? For some of you, you got into a routine. Either you learned that from me, or you saw that in my course, or somewhere else. You're in a routine. For some of you, you cut back on certain things. For some of you, you changed the way that you were eating. For some of you, you stopped Googling. For some of you, you stopped focusing. And we get complacent because we're so excited to get back to living that we drop that stress preventative lifestyle that we had before that helped to get us to this place. So a lot of us, we just get super complacent, not realizing, like, look, we're obviously a person that's vulnerable to anxiety. So it doesn't take anything for it to just try to come back in our lives, and we kind of have to be prepared. I don't want you guys to be paranoid in between cycles. That's not what I mean. I want you to live your life and to enjoy things, but you got to keep some things there to help prevent stress. We are vulnerable to this. I've got new neural pathways and new highways and new ways of thinking in my brain, but there's still some dusty old roads in there that I just don't travel on, but they're still somewhere tucked in there. You know what I mean? The idea, whenever I talk about recovery, this is just my opinion. You know, I view recovery as like if you go get, you know, evaluated by a mental health professional, they're not going to diagnose me with an anxiety disorder. You know, that's what I view as recovery. I'm not saying that there isn't some old tendencies or old things. I might still be a little bit more afraid of dying than the average person. Maybe I do think about it maybe a little bit more than somebody else, but it's not to a level of you know, it's not, you know, debilitating. It's not ruining my life. And I wouldn't certainly be diagnosed with any type of a disorder at this point in my life. But, you know, that's just my view on recovery is like, I don't want you guys to have the diagnosis. You know, if you got evaluated for whatever it is, you don't meet the criteria. Hey, that's a great life right there, right? That's a great life. Hell, even getting 75% there is a great life compared to being stuck in the deep hell of the vicious cycle that we get into. So where was I going with that? So yeah, we're getting back into some of the things that kind of led to stress building up in your life. Maybe you went back to partying all the time. Maybe you picked smoking back up. Maybe you started eating trash again. You know, maybe you stayed in that toxic environment or went back to a toxic relationship. So guess what? Now stress starts to add up, you know, and it builds. And sometimes we don't even realize it's building up. And if you have health anxiety and you're not living a healthy lifestyle, you're just going to worry about your health again at some point. You're going to worry about it at some point again. It's gonna manifest in some way, and you're going to freak out. You'll be like, oh crap, well, I haven't been living healthy. I haven't been doing this. And then we're scared straight eventually again, and then we get out of it again. And then the idea is just to keep learning. But some of you are just becoming too complacent, or you never did establish. Maybe you got out of this cycle, but you never really did establish a stress preventative lifestyle. You just got past those symptoms. The message isn't working, so the symptoms stop. But you didn't change also the way that you think. You didn't rewire. You didn't handle your elephant in the room, which is your fear of death, dying, and disease. You didn't address what you're going to do the next time you feel a sensation. You didn't establish rules, which I've talked about on this channel before. You need to have a set of rules for yourself. What do I do whenever I feel symptoms the next time, or I feel something in my body that's weird? What do I do? You know, that like you need to have that on a laminated card or something that you carry around in your wallet or your purse, so you have it there. But you got to have a rule system. So a lot of things just didn't change, you know, really at a deep level, or the stress prevented lifestyle, you know, either never was established or you got away from it. Hopefully I'm making sense with all this. So then guess what? An adversity hits. Maybe you got laid off at your job, not your fault, but you know, maybe they're cutting hours or something. You know, a family member dies of cancer or something, you know, and now you're like, oh my God, you know, like then you start thinking about that cancer, and you start thinking about what if that's, you know, is it genetic? Is it something that's going to happen to me? You start getting sympathy symptoms. Or say you just have a random stomach pain. And I'm going to use this as an example, okay, to give you like how you can go from one cycle to another, okay? So I got out of the heart stuff. I had a few weeks. It could have been a month and a half or two. I can't remember exactly the times and dates of all these things. I wasn't the type that documented every little thing. I never thought I was going to be talking about it on YouTube anyways. So it could have been a few weeks. It could have been a couple months. I just know I had a little period after that where things were getting better. Was I still sensitive to feeling certain things? Yes. I just wasn't really biting, you know, taking the bait or anything on that, because a lot of it was residual heart and chest stuff that was slowly melting away, right? I wasn't afraid of it anymore, so that was great. And then I didn't have the panic attacks. So I was starting to normalize down. Well, one day, I think I just randomly had a little pain in the bottom right portion of my stomach. And I remember it being there, and I remember thinking like, oh, what's that about? It was dull. I'm telling you, on a scale of 1 to 10, it might have been a 1 or 2, but you know how it is whenever you have those things and you're like, what is this? And I talked about this yesterday. The unknown factor, what could it be? And then you throw in the fear, you can turn a 2 into an 8 just because of fear alone. So Pain-wise, not bad. Like, it didn't keep me from doing anything. But I felt it there, and it was there all day, okay? So the first day, I think I didn't handle it great with the focus. I was focusing, and then I started to do this. I started to push and poke. Not only am I just like irritating whatever that area is, I mean, sometimes you can push and poke so hard, guys, you'll bruise yourself without even realizing it. You'll have bruises underneath your skin. Maybe it's not visible, but you can bruise yourself within. Do the same thing with your lymph nodes. So that's something that I didn't learn, because I used to be all up here whenever I had my heart stuff. Also, you're sending energy there. When I was doing this, I thought I was comforting myself. No, I was just putting a big ass mark on my sternum, red mark here, bruising myself, and then sending fear. When I'm touching, I'm sending energy here. I wasn't relieving anything. That's at least for me. So I'm poking over here, and I'm wondering, and I'm focusing, and I'm starting to think, like, you know, because I hadn't worked on that. I didn't work on that. Nor was I prepared. I thought I was just done with this whole thing. So I started to think, like, oh my God, maybe it's colon cancer or something like that. I wonder, I don't know. So I give it a day. I've already created a new habit, I feel like, at this point. So I wake up the next day, and then I start to feel it again. I'm like, oh my God, it's still there. So then I'm thinking, well, maybe this isn't gas, or maybe it wasn't something I ate, or maybe it wasn't maybe it's a tumor or something like that. But I do honestly think it was just trapped air, or something I ate, or well, who knows, right? Sometimes our body just does some weird things. I think I focused and feared on it, sent energy there via touching and all that stuff, and it established a new habit. Bam, I'm in a new cycle. What do I do? Do I do the right thing after that? No, what do? I jump on Google, start looking up all these things, and I start thinking that I have digestive cancer. I'm looking up testimonials. Now I'm looking up prognosis and treatment options. What's the 5-year survival rate on colon cancer? I'm trying to decipher, is it stomach cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer? Is it, you know, could it be just the front side of my kidneys that I'm feeling in my stomach? Could it be something wrong with my kidney situation? And then guess what the next thing I'm doing, guys? I'm sticking my damn head down in the toilet, checking out my stool, you know, to see what's going on with it. Is there any weird colors? And then one day I just had a weird bowel movement, like we do sometimes. It was lighter in color, and then there was some blood, and I freaked the hell out. You know, looking back, that was just a hemorrhoid, and I had a history of having those. I talked about it on this channel. I've had constipation on and off a lot of my life, ever since I was a kid. It's just something I've always had to deal with. So hemorrhoids, they happen sometimes, right? You know, they come up, they're there for a few days, and then, you know, you put some preparation H, and then you're good to go after that, right? You just want to try to eat as healthy as you can so you don't have to strain, right? Well, I think I just had one of those bowel movements, and it was just bright red, which is a good sign if it's bright red. But I didn't think rationally, didn't think about hemorrhoids, I didn't think about the color being bright red or nothing. I was like, oh my God, this is what it is. Oh my gosh. I instantly got depressed. I started to freak out. I was still in this mode of, should I go to the doctor or not? And that's another thing. Whenever I entered these cycles, you know, I'd already focused and done enough damage, so I might as well go get checked out as soon as I can, so I can go ahead and move forward and not worry about it anymore, and I can get to acceptance better instead of dragging these cycles out. But I was like at this point where I was just scared to do that. So I was just like, I don't want to have to do that, or I didn't want to have to go to the doctor as much as I used to. But I'd already shot myself in the foot with the focus, the fear, the Googling. I might as well go to the doctor at this point quickly. So didn't do that. So it stayed there for a couple months. I'm talking about I'd wake up, I'd feel it until I went to bed. You know, sometimes I wouldn't have noticed it as much. But yeah. So finally, I get to the point to where I'm going to make an appointment. You know, like I want to get like a ultrasound or something. So I make that appointment. It's a week away. I'm sitting on the couch. And I just noticed a few hours later that I didn't feel any pain there. I got up. I was like, oh my God, it's gone. Are you kidding me? I remember running around my backyard, throwing the football to myself, like, yes, yes. You know how you get when you get pumped up, or you have a big breakthrough, or you finally accept, or you get good news from a doctor. And I think I had so much gratitude and so much positivity. I think that just fueled that symptom, that just, or something, or sparked something in my subconscious, in my body. That symptom never came back. I never had it again. To this day, I've never felt anything like that. So 3 months, constant symptoms. I finally made an appointment. I was like, at that point, and I think what really did it was, look, I made an appointment. I'm going to get checked out. I don't know. I'll figure it out then. You know, I'm going to let go. I let go of control. That was like my form of letting go of control. And that's why I tell you guys, like the broad answer to anxiety recovery, let go of control, you know. It's more complicated than that, I get it. But that's the very broad answer to recovery. So I let go of control. The symptom melted away. One of the most amazing things. I love telling that story. So hopefully you enjoyed that. And it also shows you how wildly powerful our brain is, how it can just cause symptoms in a certain area from just focus and fear. And then whenever you let go of control, sometimes it can go away. I'm not promising that letting go of control is going to make all your symptoms melt away that day like it did for me, but it definitely can happen over a course of a few weeks or a couple months, you know, while you're putting all the other pieces in place. So I just wanted to give you an example. Like that was what going from a cycle to another cycle looked like. A little bit of peace where I was still in a sensitive and vulnerable state. And then something would happen. In my case, it was mainly just me feeling a sensation, whether it would be caused by anxiety or not. And then I would do all the wrong things again. Now, the thing is as time went on, I started to little by little pick up on things and not handling those moments as bad. So things got a little bit better as time went on. And then finally, at the very end, when I was done with it, you know, I just had a good rule system in place, like, you know, which I'm not going to go into detail on it. Go check out my videos. I have like 3 videos about going to get checked on a lymph node back here that was calcified. And this is post-anxiety. And I show you how I handled that whole process. So that's kind of an example of me handling something that would have freaked me out in the past. So that can kind of give you an idea of what things were like for me after. And I'm in an even better place now. So I finally stopped Googling things, doing all this excessive research. I stopped putting focus and fear when I felt something, whether it's from being a little anxious or, you know, just a normal thing. I had a rule system on, like, when am I going to go to the doctor and schedule an appointment. Bleeding, blood, nausea, vomiting, drastic weight loss, pain level. You got to come up with rule systems for you. I can't do that for you. And I can't tell you when to go to the doctor and when to not go to the doctor. That's the part of recovery that you're going to have to do on your own. You're going to do the whole thing on your own. But as far as like taking direct advice from me. So that's what it looked like. And I mean, I went in and out of different things. I had a lot of little mini cycles that would last, you know, a few days to a few weeks. And then I would have cycles that would last like the heart anxiety, 2.5 years. My cycle, the last one, was like a year and a half of lymphoma. But I had a bunch that were like a few weeks to a couple months. The stomach thing was a few months. I went through a thing, fear and throat cancer, brain cancer, MS, Parkinson's, just a lot of different things. Got blood clots and a lot of other stuff, you know, a lot of different little mini cycles that I went through. But hopefully you got some value, guys, and kind of learn from me and to kind of see what it's like to go from a certain cycle to another cycle. If you want extra help, guys, to supplement what you're already doing with your recovery process, get my course, Elite Anxiety Bootcamp, helping a lot of people. I want you to be involved in that if you haven't been able to take advantage of that course. A lot of awesome bonus materials that you're going to get with it, tools to work along with, close to 100 videos that are going to take you step by step through that process. My coaching information is down below. Please subscribe if you're new here. You know, if you made it this far in the video, and I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. So here's another one, and I'm going to try to have another video out tomorrow. But I love y'all, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.